Hi, this is Jack Byrom.
Hi, this is Jack Byron.
I wanted to give a short presentation on the impacts of eating an animal product diet on human health and those impacts on the animals that we eat or exploit, such as cows, and also the impact of this uh, dangerous practice on the overall health of the planet. And I will give a brief prescription, a solution to the massive problems that eating beef, butter, and cheese has placed upon all of us. One of the things that I think it's important to point out is that regarding 20th century humans, especially in the United States and Western Europe, starting to eat massive amounts of animal foods such as chicken and beef. I think we really didn't know the hazards to our health and the planet. We did know that animals suffered, but I would say it's totally different what happened 100 years ago on the family farm and what's happening now with these vast industrial slaughterhouses is just horrifying. If you think that animals have a soul or they are sentient beings, it's just uh, it's really one of the worst things about modern American culture that the average person just doesn't care about these chickens and pigs and cows. Um, so there are three problems with basing your diet on eating animal foods: personal health destruction, affecting the entire planet, the environmental health of your home, and as mentioned, that the animals really suffer, such as these factory farms of chickens, which a lot of people think that chicken is somehow healthier for the environment, or more touchy-feely, more Christian if you go to Chick-fil-A. And really, that argument just doesn't hold up. So let's go ahead and talk about um, these three things and just really focus on the fundamentals. Let's just wipe away all the baloney that's out there. There's an awful lot of it. Let's just get right to the basics, the meat of the matter. Sorry. The human animal is a primate, and primates are plant eaters. And as other researchers and doctors such as John McDougall have noted, the human primate really functions best on a diet of primarily starch. A lot of meat, a lot of animal products like cheese and dairy do not do the human organism well long term at all. So our optimum diet is that of plants, and so we really have no need to be eating animal products such as chickens. We currently in the United States eat now 1 million chickens an hour. for no reason other than we think they taste good. Um, anyway, the consequences of this on the animal world are pretty devastating when you think about the millions of very intelligent mammals, such as cows and pigs, that we slaughter every year um, for our convenience. There's no need for this protein, or we're not on a prairie farm 200 years ago, and there's lots of other things to eat besides that pig. We have access to world markets. We can eat almonds from California. We can eat grapes from Chile in the winter. We can eat apples from Washington, all over the world. So it's really unethical, and it's also tremendously environmentally wasteful to be relying on animal products for our food. And even the chickens suffer. A lot of us have seen the factory farms full of hundreds of thousands, perhaps, of chickens all crammed into small spaces and walking around in their own droppings. And it's really sad. That is a living animal. So why do it? Why not move on to a new and better way of doing things? Sadly enough, something like 80% of most health problems in Western countries such as the United States are caused by lifestyle, and the majority of that factor is what you eat. As Dr. McDougall says, it's the food. So the epidemic of heart disease, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune disorders, obesity, this is largely caused by eating the wrong food for the human organism. And this is based on abundant clinical epidemiology and also even controlled studies going back for decades. It seems very, it just seems up in the air, like we're all confused. Like one person says eggs are good for you. The egg people say, oh, eggs, it's been proven, look at this study that eggs are good for you. And then somebody else comes along and says, no, I'm a vegan. Eggs have a lot of cholesterol, they'll kill you. So what is actually true? So there's a lot of cherry picking of data. There's a lot of financial self-interest. But if you take and just get to the basics and just ask yourself, is it really the natural order of things that there are almost 800,000 new cases of cardiovascular disease in the United States every year? Is that really the natural order of things? That God designed the human organism so poorly that something like 50% of us will develop cardiovascular disease within our lifetimes? Is it really the natural order of things that 2/3 of the organism in certain countries such as Mexico or the United States become obese? I don't think so. I think it's a mass delusion, it's a mass confusion, and the answer is education. The answer is education. That doesn't mean that we'll never have health problems, that people won't still get sick and have disability or die of things like staph or a car accident. But I think the abundant scientific evidence going back over 100 years has really shown that the problem is eating meat and dairy, fat, and oil as a large part of our diet. So at the current time in 2022, uh, we really are facing a climate emergency. The polar ice is melting. We're looking at devastating storms increasing in frequency, severe drought, etc. So we need to do something now. And I think a lot of people are haven't really changed their personal behavior. They may vote on the issue and talk about it and support doing something, but they're not really seeing how their personal behavior can really make a difference right now. And the biggest way that you can do that, and this is based, again, on peer-reviewed science, the fastest, most effective way for you to slow down and mitigate the crisis before us is to give up all animal-based foods. Especially eating beef has a huge environmental impact when you compare that to what someone else might be eating in a different culture at a different time. For instance, in Uganda, if somebody is living off corn or sweet potatoes and getting all their protein and proper nutrition, by the way, as opposed to us eating, 80, 90 pounds of beef on average a year in the United States, the greenhouse gases emitted by the culture of all those cows and the huge environmental resources spent in their slaughter, transport, and so forth is incredibly wasteful. And I have a picture of beans up here because I really think that beans can help save the planet. You've just got to start eating them and stop eating beef. So a couple of years ago, there was a peer-reviewed study in a respected journal in the United States that showed that if every person in the United States simply did one dietary change, it would have a huge impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So what that change would be is just think of the beef you eat, the hamburger, the ground beef, the chuck, T-bone steak or whatever. So a couple times a week. If you were just to simply change nothing else, but replace that beef in your diet with beans, and you could keep on eating your chicken and your pork and your cheese and, your carrots and your ice cream. If you simply did that, every American did that, it would dramatically reduce our greenhouse gases to the point that we could almost meet our climate gas reduction goals agreed to in the 2015 Paris Accords. Something like would mean about like 2/3 of our target, and do nothing else. No more Teslas, no solar panels, keep on burning coal, etc. All you got to do is cut out the beef. So that's just a little illustration of the power that a simple dietary change could make, rather than trying to get Joe Biden to pass legislation, arguing in Congress, trying to put 1,000,000 solar panels on the roof, yada, yada, yada. Don't wait. Just do something right now. And plus, it'll benefit your health. It really will. Here's just two of the references that I mentioned, of the studies I mentioned that show what we could achieve if everybody went to a starch or plant-based diet. And there's a body of research based on population studies, on epidemiology, and even clinical studies going back really to the early 20th century, showing the bigger picture as well, that it's actually completely false that humans need animal protein to thrive. That actually was known very well early on, and as recent as the 70s. That was with the work of Nathan Perdigan, Walter Kepner at Duke University, and many others such as Roy Swank at the University of Oregon Health Sciences Center, had shown that actually most plants, such as a potato or sweet potato, even wheat, have pretty much complete complement of the 8 essential amino acids already in them. So the myth of protein deficiency from eating plants is just that. It's completely false. And the animal industry has really promoted this and benefited greatly from it at the great expense of our personal health over the years. So, wrapping it all up, your health, the climate, and the environment, and the suffering of animals. Number one, your health. You can take responsibility for your health. You can use the latest science and a decade of epidemiology, the knowledge of such visionaries as Nathan Perdigan, Dr. Walter Kempner, many others that have shown for decades with the clinical studies and so forth that humans were really not meant to eat cheese and dairy and chicken. They were meant to eat potatoes and rice and bread and sweet potatoes and carrots and so forth. The epidemiology is, a century of research showing, for instance, what the average person in China before 1980 consisted of white rice and vegetables and a tiny bit of chicken or fish. And they had virtually no heart disease, virtually no cancer, virtually no diabetes, very low rates of osteoporosis and so forth. That's from the China-Oxford study that was done years ago, published by T. Colin Campbell. The Tarahumara Indians of northern Mexico live off squash, corn, and beans, and they have virtually no coronary heart disease or hypertension. Don't let the Atkins people confuse you about fat, about meat, about cheese. They've got something to sell, or they're purposely trying to cause confusion. I don't know why, but we're talking about health. We're not talking about weight loss. We're talking about personal health, not having a stroke. Plants are the way to go. Regarding the suffering of animals, it's really untenable in this day and age. Like I said, we can grow anything. We can grow a field of rice. We can grow potatoes in Colorado. You can grow a potato in Kansas. You can live off corn. You can live off anything. You don't need to grow animals like pigs, chickens, and cows. You don't even need fish. I think the fish suffer less, but there's no reason to make a cow, a highly conscious creature, live and suffer her whole life just so you can have a milkshake or a Big Mac. It's time to move on from that. It's time to move on. There's no need for it. And then the other thing is the environment, the whole earth. How many people do we have on this planet? 7 billion. There was absolutely no way to sustain the nutrition needs of all 7 billion people if we were all to go to the standard American diet. The entire planet would collapse. In fact, it is collapsing. And only a portion of the planet now lives off chicken McNuggets and Ben & Jerry's ice cream. So we need to go back the other way to the traditional diet. You need to be a conservative, eat what your forefathers ate. They ate potatoes, they ate grains, whole grains such as rye and wheat and corn, and they had arteries that were as clean as a whistle. So for the sake of the planet, for the sake of our children, we need to go back to a traditional diet of starch. By the way, in ecology, a well-known ecological principle is that every time energy moves up one level of a food chain, so for instance, if a fish is eating algae, 90% of the bodily energy in the algae is lost as it is converted into fish tissue. So that's going up one level in a food chain. So every time you do that, you lose 90% of the energy. So if you're talking about a food chain that's 5 items high, like, if a tiger is eating a smaller animal that's eating a smaller animal and so forth 5 times, there's orders of magnitude of energy lost by the time you get to the top of the food chain of the tiger. So we know better. We have a choice. We're not animals. We're not locked into a certain diet. We can do what's best for the planet and for our health. So just do it. Thank you.